Okay, we have heard from all of the politicians and all of today's top stories, and now it's your turn. We're live and we're ready to hear from you. This is Raw Politics, your call.
Thanks for joining us tonight here on Raw Politics, your call. We're live in the European Parliament in Brussels. And the first question we're putting to you tonight is, does the European Union need saving? Because the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, seems to think so. Today he put out a letter, now not just to the French people, but rather to the whole of Europe. He had it printed in multiple newspapers across the continent, saying that Europe needed a renaissance, that never had the continent been in such danger, and he fears a so-called mass retreat to nationalism. So we want to get your thoughts on that letter by the French President Emmanuel Macron. Does the European Union need saving?
Yeah, maybe is he the guy that can save Europe? Okay, another question we are asking you tonight is, what would make you vote in the EU elections? Now, Emmanuel Macron, he gave a host of suggestions on what he could do to save Europe. So basically, he was suggesting a European-wide minimum wage. He talked about food safety. He talked about increasing border control, all that. But at the end of the day, it's all about you. So what would it take for you to go to the polls and vote at the European elections? What topic matters to you most? So we want to know that.
And as Tessa mentioned, there was plenty of them because I got through them all, and there's loads. He's got lots of ambitious plans in there, but you have to tell us what you would like him to focus on and what would make you, of course, vote. And then switching gear, our third question tonight is, who do you trust to control your technology? Because there's a new global race, a new arms race, or nothing to do with weapons. It all comes down to this. Your mobile phone.
We all have them.
The battle for 5G is very much on, and the Chinese tech giant Huawei may have the edge. But the US says that the company's links to the Chinese government is just a little bit too close for comfort. So we want to get your thoughts. Who do you trust to control your mobile phone?
Yeah, important technology. 5G is going to be everywhere in the future. All right, you know how to get in touch. There's several ways to get in touch with us. First, you can call us for free. The number is 00800 3333 7002. Our colleagues Philip and Victoria, they are waiting for your call, so do call in. Also, we are on social media, of course, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm there. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics, and you can also find us on Skype.
Don't be shy, of course. Use your Skype, and then we get to see you, because you can see us. You're fed up of us. We want to see you. We want to know what you think about all these topics. And when you get via our control room downstairs, you'll be straight through to our MEPs who are joining us here tonight. We've got Linnea Engström. She's a Swedish member of the European Parliament from the Green Party, so a hardcore pro-European.
Yeah.
And we have Ignazio Corrao, an Italian member of the European Parliament, who's from the Five Star Movement, the Italian party, and he sits here with the Europe for Freedom and Direct Democracy. So you sit with UKIP, you sit with Nigel Farage.
A little more Eurosceptic.
A lot of outgoing MEPs. So I'm curious to get, your take.
Before we go to them tonight, this is going to be interesting. Let us get all the latest headlines from our team in Lyon with Isabelle Kumar.
And good evening to you, Tessa and Maeve. Our top stories. Police in London have launched an investigation after suspicious packages were found at three main transport hubs in the capital. The packages at Waterloo train station, City Airport and Heathrow Airport all contain small improvised explosive devices capable of igniting a small fire when opened. Counter-terrorism services say they believe the three devices were linked. Emmanuel Macron's roadmap for a European renaissance has prompted response from EU leaders across the continent, and the feedback is largely positive. European Council President Donald Tusk has backed up Macron's concerns around external players undermining EU elections. Hungarian Prime Minister and EU critic Viktor Orban has also commented he welcomed Macron's initiative for talks on the EU's future. And in Canada, the scandal that has engulfed Justin Trudeau's government continues to grow after the resignation of a second key cabinet minister in a matter of weeks. Well, Treasury Board President Jane Philpott has stepped down, citing loss of confidence in the government's handling of a corruption inquiry involving a major Canadian engineering firm. And those are our top stories. Now back to you, Tessa and Maeve in Brussels.
All right, thanks for that, Isabel. All right, just to remind our viewers, we're asking you 3 questions tonight. The first question, does Europe need saving? And actually, is Emmanuel Macron the guy to save it? And the second question, we are asking you, what would make you vote in the European elections? A host of issues that matter to people. We want to know what matters most to you. And the third question we're asking, US or China? Whom do you trust with your control of your 5G tech? Big question. All of us are connected these days. So China or US?
And good evening, of course, to all of you who are watching us live tonight on our Facebook stream. Hello already to Maurizio, who's told us that the European Union is a joke. He said it's hard times for citizens and it's easy money for bureaucrats. That's what his take is. And we've also been polling earlier on our Twitter earlier in the day to find out what all of you in the Twitter sphere think of the question that we're putting to you tonight, which of course is, does the EU need to change? Does it need to reform? And the majority think that absolutely the way the EU needs to be run needs to change. 76% say yes, and 11% say no, and 13% say maybe. So a lot of consensus there that something needs to change.
And why are we talking about this topic? Is because the French president, Emmanuel Macron, he just launched his battle cry, essentially, for the European elections there. He had an open letter published in several newspapers in the EU, and he basically said that Europe is in danger. And he says it's never been in more danger since the Second World War. I mean, that is quite a big statement to make. And one of the biggest dangers, he says, that Europe needs protecting from are the populists and the nationalists. So I'd like to ask you, Ignazio, does Europe need to be saved from populists and nationalists like your party, as it would be described? Like you.
Probably the one who needs to be saved is Macron, because he's having big problems in his country and he's using these words only to have a reason to make an electoral campaign. So he's just starting his electoral campaign, he has to find an enemy. But the problem and the one who needs to be saved is Macron. And another thing to say is that probably Europe and the European Union needs to be saved from people like him, because he's the one who represents the strong powers who are really far away from European citizens. The idea of European Union representing only the rights and the interests of multinational corporations or big financial powers or big banking system like Macron does is completely wrong. If people is far away from this union, the reason is because of people like Macron and his friends.
Linnea, you must agree.
What
I think this is a really serious threat when you're saying this, because you're undermining our democratic system. I mean, I'm not a fan. I'm a Swedish MEP. I'm not a big fan of Macron, but he's still a leader in these very, very difficult times. And look at what he's doing with climate change. He's still providing us with a vision that we could be carbon-free by 2050. I mean, that's the kind of leadership we need. And what we don't need is people undermining our political leaders and our system when we're under a constant threat from different a variety of threats, really.
And Linnea, you mentioned there climate change. Emmanuel Macron actually sat down last week with 2 of the big climate change activists, Anuna and Kira from Belgium and Louisa from Germany. He took 2 hours out of time to prove that, that's something he is focusing on. But let's take a caller. We have Peter standing by tonight to talk to us from Liverpool. Thank you so much, Peter, for giving us a shout here tonight. Do you think the European Union needs saving?
Actually, I'm from Poole, not Liverpool.
Poole, excuse me.
Okay.
So,
the European Union needs saving for a number of reasons. First of all, despite all its faults, it fulfills the need for internationalism. The nation state, if you think about it, it's dead because it's powerless in front of global capitalism. Nationalism is also discredited because it leads to excesses. All you have to do is think of national socialism, and you know where that led. Communism is equally dead. So there is a dearth of ideology that has to be filled by, somebody has to fill the gap. Personally, I have enjoyed 70 years of war-free Europe, at least in the majority of Europe. And I'm grateful to the European Union for that. It's basically the only thing that would save Europe is if Europe faces the world united.
Exactly. Okay.
You're competing against China, we're competing against the United States.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree.
Ignazio
I totally
agree,
agree.
and our Belgian MEP said that exact same point last night. We had Catherine Van Bremt on last night, yeah?
Every month we go to Strasbourg, and if you travel around Strasbourg, you can really see the shape, the evidence in the landscape of those wars that we fought as Europeans. And it's disgraceful. Like, a whole generation of men died. That's why we're here. It's an incredible thing that we're sitting here and still legislating together. I think it's something to preserve.
Yet those constant summits just end up being a squabbling.
We all agree on that. There are many good things that have been done during these last 70 years, and this is probably the most important one.
Yeah.
So keep the peace in a country that has been in trouble for decades and centuries. But the point is that after 70 years, we have to do some progress.
Sure.
So we have to change priorities, because the priorities that we had during this last year are not close to the needs of citizens. And I'm not a nationalist, I'm not an anti-European, I'm against the ideology of left and right. I'm just talking about the future of Europe, standing all together for a different Europe, a social Europe, closer to the citizens and a little more far from the interests of the big that are represented now.
But because Peter was talking about, if you remember nationalist socialism and where that led, and
communism, both.
And we understand you are from Five-Star Movement, but then your government, you also have the League, which takes a more, hardline stand. I know. But we're talking about these kinds of rhetoric.
Democracy.
No system is perfect. No relationship is perfect. No person is perfect. This democratic project has a lot of flaws. But still, we're legislating for soon to be 27 countries. That's something to be proud of. What we need is to promote the European project even more.
But what Peter was saying...
We do good laws. We have to be proud.
Yes.
And if you can agree, because Peter from Poole there was saying, you guys need to be united sometimes to get things done, because the EU has just been muddling on now for years and years and years. Constant summits, endless late-night meetings about be it migration crisis or various different matters, but very little actually getting done.
I just want to ask Peter. Peter, are you still on the line? Do you think that I know you like the European project, but do you think the EU needs to change something fundamentally?
Well, it needs to become a little bit more socialist, to be honest with you.
Your country just saw Brexit. There's a lot of your skepticism there. So do you think, what do you think needs to change fundamentally?
In Europe?
In Europe, yeah.
Well, the reason why the populists, you call them populists, they're basically effectively the precursor of something a lot worse than that. They are basically criticizing Europe for austerity. That's the major problem that they have gotten onto. And to be honest, I disagree with austerity. I do not think that this is the way forward. Europe has to become a lot more liberal than it is. By that I don't mean a lot more socialist than it is, rather than a lot more liberal.
Because the things are completely different.
Sure.
In socialist and
liberal values, but not austerity policies. And there I think we can agree that these austerity policies are really, really destructive for our societies. European citizens have seen a tremendous decrease in living standards these last years. And
caused by...
Yeah, but that's affecting...
neoliberalism, which is the recipe.
But that's what the Peter from Poole was saying. It needs a more social policy.
And I want to bring in this opinion from Katia Ferreira on Facebook, because she says Macron should be asking himself, and as should other leaders, why are people becoming nationalists? Actually, that is a good question. Or why is this move, like the rise of such parties? So, why?
What I can say, for example, the Five-Star Movement, which has nothing to do with extremism, which you know what Five-Star Movement is. We were born on a protest because the establishment in Italy was closed inside its privileges, and there were no closeness to the needs of people. So we had to go to the streets and ask the government, ask the European Union to change its priorities, to change its policies. This is the reason why the populism or the national nationalism is the answer to things that are not done by governments and by
well, what would you say to someone like Peter? Thank you, by the way, Peter, for calling. He said earlier, I remember that sentence, he said that populism is a precursor to something worse. How would you respond?
But I think actually, the five-star movement is something very interesting in European politics. And it's not, you can't compare it really to other right-wing, extremist or nationalist movements.
Some would say left even, but...
Half of my people come from the left.
Italian politics is so extremely destructive and sort of problematic in so many senses, and your initiative was, at least in the beginning, very interesting in a way of mobilizing ordinary people, ordinary citizens. I think we just have to realize that, we are made to recognize threats everywhere. So we recognize that's how our brain are functioning. So we tend to see more, we tend to be more inclined to listen to threats and to scaremongering.
Okay, last comment before we go to a break.
Okay. Visions about the new Europe.
I can give you a classic example of what we're saying. We had government coming from the left, from the left, who didn't do anything socially speaking. The five-star movement government, this last one, was the first who bring the minimum income to Italy, who increased the pensions.
Which Macron was also suggesting, by the way.
Suggestion. Everyone talks, and we are the one who does the...
Has that been implemented? Well, let's get your thoughts on that. I think we're
this is the point.
We will have to. Just to remind our viewers, there are many ways to get in touch. You can call us. The number's on your screen, 00800 333 7002. And I really want you to use the hashtag because I'm waiting for it. All right.
And the questions that we're putting to you tonight: does the European Union need saving? What would make you vote in the European elections taking place this May? And finally, who do you trust to control your technology? Get on the phone or get on Skype and put your comments and all your tweets, and we will address them to our panelists.
We'll be back. All right, welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. Now, we're asking you three questions tonight. First question, does the EU need saving? This is based on Emmanuel Macron's battle cry for the European Parliament election, saying that the EU does need to be saved from populists and nationalists. And the second question, we're asking you, what would make you vote in the EU elections? A host of issues. We want to know what would it take for you to go to the polls? And the third question, we're asking, whom do you trust to control your tech? China or the US? We're talking about this because of Huawei and 5G. This is the new arms race, they're calling it. All right.
And we've lots of comments coming in tonight, which is great, on both Twitter and Facebook. So thank you so much to all of you from them. Some people are extremely active, like Daniel Surtees. He reckons that the European Union refuses to listen to its member states. It goes against their grand plan. He says Greece is in a mess. He says Italy and Hungary are not happy. And he said there's been 16 weeks of protest in France, and Macron is just not listening to the people, and the EU are behind them. He said the EU is a big dictatorship.
That's something that, that's
I didn't say it's a big dictatorship.
And that's what we're getting all the time. Most people, when they call in, they kind of have the similar take to what Daniel is telling us there.
It's not reacting to the problems.
Well, there you go. I think that's what people are saying about the European project. Maybe they are for Europe, but as you were saying, who is acting on the problems? I think this is a general call, isn't it?
Macron, he also met with Greta Thunberg, who is a brilliant young girl with autism, 16 years old. She's leading the climate strikes, and she's a very positive role model for this kind of, peaceful, active citizenship, mobilizing young people. That's what we need more. We don't need
very good
riots in the streets. We don't need, people undermining our leadership. Of course, hard criticism, but that's not saying that, let's build something together. Let's not just.
But I guess, Ignazio, what you would argue is that Greta Thunberg is a young Swedish activist. I'm sure people in various villages in France didn't really care that Macron dedicated time to her. They would rather that he focused on their local issues.
I don't think that Macron really believes in that struggle of the young activist. It's a very good image.
He's a con man.
It's a very good image for an electoral campaign because it's a young woman standing for the rights not only of the European people but of the people of all the world. Because when we talk about climate change, it's not only Europe, it's the whole world. And of course, we all agree with that position. We are inside. We are a very green party. We were born on environmental battles. But when it comes to politics and politics in France, there are many problems that Macron should give answers to, because people have problems to get to the end of the month. If there are problems with occupation,
this and you met with the Gilets jaunes actually recently as well. In Paris.
A few months ago, with a small delegation of the moderate part, because it's a very big and heterogeneous movement, so it's very hard to understand who represents
whom and what.
But isn't Emmanuel Macron, and in fact every former French president's job, just absolutely mission impossible? I mean, it's not easy to govern, is it, as you've probably seen yourself?
Absolutely. It's very difficult, but we have to start from somewhere. I mean, if they don't start with the real big problems that the French organization is facing, which is similar with all the structure of all the European countries. So neoliberalism policies, the advantages always for the big and the disadvantages only for the normal people, for the regular people, favors for the transnational corporation and the former colonies where French companies still go and take advantage of the resources. These are global problems that Macron is not facing. So this is where I'm saying. I mean, I don't believe in that kind of leaders.
And just on that point of whether the European Union needs saving, we had a nice comment earlier from Captain Europe, who was on Twitter saying that absolutely, clearly, the European Union needs saving. And he said, one bit of advice, listening to people, he said, actually helps sometimes. And he says, besides security, the citizens expect the European Union to deliver much more on the environment, on health and on social policies. Typically, he said, those competencies that are not pooled at EU level, but still left in the hands of the member states. So he's directing all this back to the EU member states.
All right, I think we have a caller. Let's bring in Robert. I forget.
From Dublin.
Robert, we're at Dublin. There you go. All right, Robert, do you think the EU needs to be saved?
Yeah, hi guys. I certainly do. Part of the peace process in Europe for the last 40 years. I've lived all over Europe occasionally, and I find that we need more governing council, political science association, master's degrees, competency at national and regional level to secure the peace process in Europe, rather than just having common people in parliamentary procedure. You also find that for nuclear strategic forces, counter-command, for nuclear decommissioning and non-strategic force application, you need counter-command, officer counter-command.
Yeah, Robert, do you agree with Emmanuel Macron that nationalists and populists are dangerous to Europe?
Very dangerous, yeah. We need centre ground in Europe.
You need a centre ground in Europe. Funny, there's not that many nationalists and populists showing their face yet in Ireland. Perhaps it's something to come. I know there's a bit of a movement of Brexit. Colleagues of yours actually on the Europe for Freedom and Direct Democracy group have been trying to push that, holding various seminars in Dublin that Ireland needs to get out of the European Union. But as polls have seen today, that is not something that Irish people want.
No, it isn't. Linnea, what do you think about what Robert was saying?
I think he's right. I mean, but that's what we're trying to do in this part. I mean, I am in fisheries. I work with oceans and fisheries. That's a natural resource that we have to share, that we really have to cooperate with. It's very interesting for Ireland as well, because they were very, very dissatisfied with the quota that they got through this allocation key from the European Union. But still they're in, still they're negotiating with us. That's how we do policy here. We sit and we argue, and it takes a long time, but still, that's what I'm saying. We're doing something, and it's not perfect, but it's cooperating.
And I guess it's not so easy to sell the EU as a project, because essentially it's a community of law.
But still, I mean, national leaders, they are blaming everything that is good, bad on the EU, and taking credit for everything that is good with the EU. So when we do something good in this house, national member states leaders, they take the credit for that. And if it's something bad, they point the finger at us. Because we're far away. We're so far away.
I don't think at all that nationalism is the answer or is a solution. I'm completely against that. So we agree. The problem is that the European Union, even with the Lisbon Treaty, is still an incomplete project. And speaking of Ireland, Ireland is one of those examples examples of states that make a different fiscal policies and that can be considered inside a community a fiscal paradise. So this is one of the, for example, big multinational corporations, the web giants, go and get their fiscal bases in Europe in countries like Ireland.
Yeah, well,
Luxembourg,
Ignazio, speaking of Ireland, Robert, I believe, is still on the line. Thanks, Robert, for staying there with us on the line. I believe you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, please, if I may.
Go for it.
As you noted, the Chinese Parliament last night had enormous manners and courtesy when the Premier was speaking, and his speech was fantastic. And the competency under the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Treaty is exceptionally high. The academic qualifications has counter-command nuclear strategic forces application. So if we can have master's degrees at World Governing Council Political Science Association candidates going forward, we'd be able to academically remove the impotence and the discord that's taken place for us.
Okay. Thanks for that, Robert from Dublin. And just want to bring in a comment from Gary from Berkshire. Thanks for that, Gary. He's a loyal viewer. The more we move away from representing the views of the people, the less they listen, the less attractive politics becomes. I think that's the crux of the matter at the end, regardless of what side of politics you're on. It's just about now everyone's on the listening tour. We're talking about that on the show. Suddenly now everyone wants to listen.
And what's interesting,
what's
interesting as well, just what you mentioned earlier, I was really interested in that point you made about the treaties. The problem now with the EU is it is so rigid and it's so bound to these treaties. And Emmanuel Macron made that point that these treaties needs to be changed. I mean, things like the Strasbourg
These
Commission.
are not good times to change
I know.
Don't even go there. No.
It's not a good time.
Another 2 years for another.
No changing.
Okay.
I know. But then you're locked into things like the Strasbourg Commission.
They should have gone beyond when it was the good time to do it, probably, at the end of the 90s and the very start of the new millennium. That was the good time. Now it's pretty difficult to do it.
Yeah,
that's something that you all agree on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very sensitive topic, especially here in Brussels. All right, just to remind you, there are many ways to get in touch with us. You can call us, you can find us on social media, and call us on Skype as well. So
absolutely, don't be shy. We want to see your face. Thanks already to Robert there from Dublin for his call, and Peter from Poole. And we're asking you tonight, does the European Union need saving? And what would make you vote in the European elections coming up in May? What policy areas would make you go to the polls between the 23rd and the 26th of May? And finally, who do you trust to control your technology, i.e. your mobile phone, as the race for 5G is on. So don't be shy, give us a shout. The line is open and it's free, and it'll be open for about 16 more minutes.
All right, see you then.
See you in a minute.
Welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. So again, we're asking you 3 questions. Does the EU need saving? Second question, what would make you vote in the EU election? So this is both questions based on the fact that Emmanuel Macron has issued his battle cry and saying that the EU needs to be saved from nationalism and populism, and had given a host of suggestions on what to do with Europe. And the third question, whom do you trust to control your tech? Is it the US or China? Now, we're asking this question because today the Huawei, the 5G tech company from China, they just opened a cybersecurity center here in Brussels, in fact, today. And also the US has been issuing warnings and telling its allies, its European allies in particular, to not use Huawei's technology. The problem there is 5G technology is going to be needed in a lot of things, from AI to the Internet of Things to electric cars, everything. So this is going to be the future. Now, why is this so important? This is being called the new arms race, because who controls this technology essentially can pretty much call itself the new superpower. You control a lot of things, basically.
Absolutely. And we're not, in fact, getting a whole lot of comments on that topic. We're getting a lot of comments on the other previous topics regarding the European elections. But we do have a caller now on that. So thank you so much. We've Simon there on the line from London. So thank you so much, Simon, for calling us here tonight on Raw Politics. Your call. Do you trust who do you trust, to control your technology?
The US or China?
I think you've just answered your own question there. You've highlighted the importance of the arms race, and I'm absolutely staggered that someone in your organisation has even crafted the question in that way. I mean, are we seriously in Europe going to put our trust in a communist regime?
Well, you see, we like to be a little bit provocative with our questions.
No, but the question there, look, the problem there is that the technology, if you look at the industry, Huawei, in terms of technology, is leading, in fact. And the EU...
1/4 of the European consumers have Huawei mobile phones.
Yeah, so from a business point of view, the EU is in need of that technology. This is why it's such a big issue, and the EU is caught in the middle.
Well, the thing is, we either develop our own technology...
Good point.
...or we come up with an alternative. But what we don't do is get into bed with a communist regime.
Okay.
I mean, and to craft it in such a way that you have to say, should we trust the Americans or should we trust the Chinese? Let's be absolutely clear that peace, security and prosperity has endured throughout Europe for the last 49 years as a result of the United States Navy and Her Majesty's Royal Navy keeping a nuclear deterrent as we speak. Maintaining a balance from your friend in the north who rides around with his shirt off on brown grizzly bears. So if you want to go down and start currying favor to the Chinese and what have you, be very careful who you choose as strategic partners.
Well, everybody's doing business with China, just to raise that point. And also, this is, Simon is pointing out, it's very important because 5G is also going to be used for weapons. I mean, it can be used for weapons technology. So it's going to be very sensitive. Would you like to respond to what Simon is saying? Linnea?
I think Simon, I'm not a war monger like that, but I think we should be very, very attentive and maybe a bit scared about China because of all the subsidized goods that are overflowing our markets. And of course, this is...
Let's not forget that the US was also accused of using technology to spy.
Yes,
but,
yes.
I understand.
Of course. Still, this is... dictatorship.
And Simon made a very good point as well. He said, we should be producing this ourselves. But
why isn't Europe doing that?
I absolutely agree with that point, and this is connected with the topic we were discussing before. Because a stronger Europe, a Europe that could develop its own technology, it's a Europe that's independent from these giants that are getting always bigger and bigger. China is getting bigger and bigger from year and year. We cannot, stand alone in this big world challenge. So we need to be united and develop our technology and participate to these new challenges of the world, because when it comes to technology, it's not just our mobile phone, it's data, it's
I severely think that we should also protect our market in a better way, because this is not, we are not dealing with a market economy like any other else. We are dealing with someone that has heavily subsidized goods, and we have to protect ourselves better than we have done previously.
And actually, just to point out that actually Huawei is already in talks and testing their technology with 12 EU countries, so it's actually in deep.
And just this morning, the Commissioner Sippes was shaking hands and smiling and having his photo taken with the CEO of Huawei, who was in town opening the new cybersecurity agency. Is that okay? I mean, I don't think Simon would think it was. But
something that we could do as European legislators, it's be careful about 5G. Because about 5Gs, there are many things that are not really clear about the implication on the human health, for example. So we can.
That's another discussion.
We can use our powers of legislating inside the European countries, because we are 500 million of consumers.
Describe those implications for our health.
But it's hard to stop.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm just curious on the health implications. What do they look like?
I heard and I read that there is not really clear what could be. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not
sure. I mean, we say that, but look at us.
Definitely a topic for another. Something I'm very interested in.
No, sure, but look at us. We're going to be using it. It's going to be hard to say, okay, let's legislate and stop this, because this is innovation and this is where everyone else is going, and Europe can't not use it. You know what I mean? I understand what you're saying, but how? I mean, how do you actually do that?
No, I mean, we have to be a part of the race, of course, and we're trying. I mean, I can say what we're trying to do here in this house. We're trying to engage in a dialogue with China on a number of different topics. Right. I mean, my feeling is just that it's quite hard, actually, because they are very advanced, and they have a very, very good system of using this technology. And
so is Europe powerless against China? Is that where we are?
Not powerless, but we definitely were a little brother with a big dad, and that we just have to realize that we have to protect ourselves in another sense, that we've been realizing that we
they're there.
If we go back to the questions,
okay, so very quickly because we have to go to a break.
If we have to trust the United States or China, I wouldn't trust none.
You wouldn't choose any. Well, there you go. That's Ignacio's answer. All right. Just to remind you, you can call us and get in touch several different ways. All of the information is on your screen.
And Matteo is writing into us to say he wouldn't trust either. He said the EU should move on their own. Thank you, Matteo, for that comment. And don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a minute. Our lines will be open for about 7 more minutes. So get on the phone. It's a free phone number and tell us what you think, whether the European Union needs saving or not, what would make you vote in the European elections coming up in May, and who do you trust to control your technology? They're the 3 questions we're putting to you tonight here on Raw Politics, Your Call. See you in a minute.
Welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. All right, before we went on the break, we were asking you, whom do you trust with your technology, especially 5G, the US or China? And we're going to continue with that topic because today, Huawei, the Chinese company, just opened a cybersecurity office here in Brussels, and the US has been warning that their technology can be used for spying, and the EU is caught in the middle. I think that is the conundrum that we have here with 5G.
Absolutely. And joining us here tonight in the discussion is Lina Engström. She's a Swedish member of the European Parliament from the Greens. And Ignazio Corrao from an Italian MEP with the 5 Star Movement. And we have now on the line Consortia from Bruges. So thanks for your call. Who do you trust to control your tech consortia, China or the United States?
Hello.
Hello. So tell us, who do you trust to control your tech, China or the US?
Well, actually, I am just wondering why all of a sudden that most of the gadget products that are used to be manufactured by Europe or how you call that, US, are now being transferred to China. We have to be very careful about this because for maybe some people are not aware of that. China is trying to become a global economic power. And so their tendency, their aim is to manufacture products that are not really, how do you call that, quality. They are more on the quantity. Okay. And so what quantity, they try to do is like just manufacture, produce more products that would be used for current consumption. It does not stay long.
Yeah, okay.
I have a camera that is stay already more than 20 years and it's still going on, except that we cannot use it anymore because of technology.
Well, China makes everything now, right?
Made in China. It takes only about 2 to 3 years. It just stop for no reason at all.
Yeah, there you go.
And because they really make the products good only for to sustain only for a period.
Okay.
It's not really like that we can keep it.
Consortia, we're going to ask our guests to respond to what you are saying. Consortia,
that we used to have.
Yeah.
And then also Europe must be very careful because China the ingredients are not. Not pure.
A very passionate consortia there. Thank you so much for your input. Quality, not quantity, was the point from our
And I think the point you were making about China, the EU coming together because there's the rise of China.
We can never compete with this low, very, very low environmental and social standards. But still, we're trying to do that. I mean, if we talk about technology, that's exactly what our caller was saying. Consortia, you're extremely right. These are very products that are just made to break in 1 year. And then we can never, ever, we're breaking our whole society with competing with these products. And that's, of course, technology as well. When we're talking about technology, we have to take into account that this has been manufactured in a very environmentally and socially unsustainable way.
We'll have to leave it at that because we're really running out of time tonight. We have time for tonight's last word. All All right, so we're going back to the original topic. We were asking, does Europe need saving? Because Emmanuel Macron gave that open letter. So here is what he said in that letter. I'll read it to you. We do need to do more and sooner, because there is the other trap, the trap of the status quo and resignation. Faced with a major crisis in the world, citizens so often ask, where is Europe? What is Europe doing? It has become a soulless market in the rise. That is Emmanuel Macron. Thank you for joining us tonight, and do join us again tomorrow. Bye.
And thanks to our guests, and thanks, of course, for all our Facebook viewers as well. And we'll see you tomorrow at the same time here on Raw Politics, Your Call.